It should come as no surprise that the Inquisition's past is shrouded in secrecy. Even the Inquisitors themselves have only the haziest of understandings as to how their organization was founded, and must rely on hundreds of disparate and contradictory legends for guidance. Indeed, there is a branch of the Inquisition itself, the Ordo Originatus, dedicated to unraveling 10 millennia of myths, exaggerations, and lies. This is a difficult task, raised to impossibility due to the opposing work of the Ordo Redactus, who focus their own efforts into deliberately obscuring the past, lest the enemies of mankind discover some advantage through knowledge of the Inquisition's beginnings. What almost all the legends agree on, however, is that the Inquisition is widely believed to have been formed by Malcador the Sigillite, by the order of the Emperor of Mankind during the final days of the Horus Heresy. As the story goes, Malcador, the regent of Terra, was charged by the Emperor immediately after news had reached Terra of the War Master Horus's betrayal during the massacre of the Loyalist Astartes on Istvan III, to gather a group of dedicated Imperial servants whose loyalty, courage, and strength of mind was unquestioned. Malcador initially chose 12 persons of an inquisitive nature, 8 loyal Space Marines taken from all the Space Marine legions, and 4 mortal Imperial lords and administrators who would, respectively, become the initial core of the Grey Knights and the conclaves of the Inquisition. They were presented by Malcador to the Emperor at the Imperial Palace after being brought secretly through enemy lines during the Siege of Terra, the final campaign of the Heresy. The chosen were individuals of unblemished loyalty, determination, and strength of mind, who would serve the Emperor well in the years to come. Beyond that one story, the legends diverge, ascribing numerous identities to each of the 12, some ludicrous, many credible, and all utterly unprovable. And yet, the foundations of the Inquisition were created from the 4 mortal lords and administrators of the Imperium chosen by the Sigillite, while the Grey Knights, the first and most effective of the Inquisition's chambers militant, were forged from the 8 loyalist Astartes. Still, the foundation of the Inquisition remains shrouded in mystery and is still a much debated subject amongst Imperial scholars. Though it is widely known across the galaxy that the Inquisition exists, its deeds are all but impossible to trace. Records are sealed, restricted, or simply destroyed. Witnesses are silenced, suffer telepathic mind wipe, or are slain out of hand. Yet, the signs are there for those who know how to look for them. Many Imperial scholars believe that the Inquisition played a pivotal role in such momentous events as the Second Founding, the beheading, and the fall of Nova Terra. There are gaps in official records that indicate whole branches of the Adeptus Terra have been put to the sword in the past, and who but the Inquisition have the authority to do such a thing, let alone disguise the act thereafter. Most who seek its past go a lifetime without proof, and those that do uncover evidence have a tendency to disappear. Some attract an Inquisitor's attention, their skills deemed suitable for advancing the Inquisition's goals. Most simply perish, their lifeless bodies later discovered in situations so damning as to call their character into question. The Inquisition watch over the Imperium. They do not care to be watched in return. It is generally accepted that the organization only solidified into its truly modern form sometime in the middle of the 32nd millennium, after the formal birth of the imperial cult as the state religion of the Imperium, some 800 Terran years after the end of the Horus Heresy. Although its essential components and apparatus, the Black Ships, the Witch Hunters of the Sisters of Silence, etc., were active in the Imperium during the Great Crusade before the Horus Heresy began. Newly uncovered sources indicate that the Inquisition had 12 key founders, who were active before, during, and after the Great Crusade. As I mentioned above, at the start of the heresy, the Emperor had ordered his regent, Malcador the Sigillite, to gather men and women of unswerving loyalty and devotion who might seek out the hidden foes of all mankind. Of the 12 ultimately presented to the Emperor, 8 of them were Space Marines drawn from his own Astartes special agents, the Knights Errant. The Knights Errant were loyalists Malcador had been tasked with gathering from across the galaxy, who were drawn from the remaining loyalist Astartes legions, or who had escaped their traitor legions after the massacre at Istvan III. These 8 Astartes would go on to become the first of what would later be known as the Grey Knights, the chamber militant of the Inquisition's Ordo Malleus, the Demon Hunters. The organization was originally a unified one, with no separate divisions, wholly dedicated to fighting the corruption of chaos wherever it reared its head within Imperial space. In the 32nd millennium, following the War of the Beast and the near destruction of Terra by the Orcs in service to the warlord known as the Beast, the Inquisition was formally divided into 2 major orders or ordos, the Ordo Malleus, which continued the Inquisition's original mission of combating the forces of chaos, and the newly formed Ordo Xenos, which dedicated itself to protecting humanity from assault by alien species. The Ordo Xenos received the Death Watch, an alliance of Space Marines drawn from many different chapters, also originally created to fight the Orcs, as its chamber militant, while the Grey Knights continue to serve the Ordo Malleus. A third major Ordo, the Ordo Hereticus, was created within the Inquisition after the terrible events of the Age of Apostasy in the 36th millennium to prevent a future reign of blood and plague of unbelief. It was assigned the Orders Militant of the Adepta Sororitas as its chamber militant and tasked with searching out all enemies of the God Emperor who existed within its own political, religious, and economic structures, including rogue psychers, mutants, and other renegades. It is for this reason that the members of the Ordo Hereticus are often called Witch Hunters. You cannot deny mankind the Emperor. He and the empire he has built are its only chance of survival. From Premius, during a secret conclave of the 4 founders of the Inquisition, following the Emperor's ascension. The ideal of restoring the Emperor to the Imperium in mortal form is at the heart of the Inquisition's formation. In the dark days that followed Horus's invasion of Terra and the Emperor's internment in the Golden Throne, the empire he had created was reeling in the aftermath of the Civil War and his ascension. 4 individuals, trusted mortal servants of his during the building of his galactic empire gathered together to discuss what was to happen. They were divided in opinion, with two believing that the fledgling Imperium could not survive without the Emperor to directly lead it, while the other two were adamant that the Emperor has ascended to a higher plane and that it was folly to interfere with the course of events as they had unfolded. The two resurrectionists, known only as Primus and Moriana, left Terra to begin their quest of bringing back the Emperor, while the two that remained acted quickly to establish themselves with the newly formed Senatorum Imperialis. Known to the Primarchs as loyal servants, these two began to lay the plans for the formation of an organization that would combat the efforts of the two dissidents, as well as all other heretics who threatened the Imperium from without, within, and beyond the veil of reality. Thus were the seeds of the Inquisition itself sown. With the backing of the surviving loyalist Primarchs, including the new Imperial Regent and Lord Commander of the Imperium, Robert Guilliman, the two first Inquisitors made themselves known to the High Lords of Terra and began to recruit like-minded individuals from amongst the adepts and warriors on Terra. Their dream of an organization dedicated to the protection of the Emperor would not be realized in their lifetimes, even extended as they were by arcane technologies, and the Inquisition as it is seen today did not fully come into existence until the 32nd millennium, by which time the Imperium itself and its many institutions were beginning to grow and spread across the galaxy anew. Yet Primus and Moriana were not idle during this time, and in the wake of the news of the Emperor's ascension, gathered together a following of their own, particularly amongst those cults and sects that were now appearing on many worlds claiming the deification of the Emperor. At some point, Moriana and Primus split, their goal still the same, but Moriana determined to use whatever means necessary to achieve her aim. Fearful that she would unleash unspeakable powers of chaos to achieve her goal, Primus created a small army of dedicated followers to combat the menace he believed she posed. These two factions clashed many times until Primus's disciples prevailed and Moriana disappeared, probably into the Eye of Terror. As the Inquisition grew and its presence was felt further and further, it came into contact with the Primus. Several hundred standard years had passed since the fateful First Conclave, and even then, the Inquisition, ever a confederacy of individuals rather than a single body, was pursuing several different agendas. The original intent, to prevent the reincarnation of the Emperor, had been diluted over the centuries, and when the Primus were discovered fighting against an ill-specified chaos threat, they were brought back into the Imperial fold. Neither the Inquisitors that contacted the sect nor the Primus themselves were aware of the irony of their cooperation, and thus the first Resurrectionist Inquisition faction was created.